Hey, welcome back. Now I'm going to tie for you a olive scud. This is just sort of a plain old scud. This is not really anything special. There's a few little tricks to tying a scud, and I'm going to try to show you a few of them as we go through and tie this fly today. So I've got this on a Tiemco 2487. You can tie it on a 2457 also, which is the same hook, just slightly heavier wire. I've got an 87 in my vise here, and this is a size 14, I believe. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to weight this fly. You don't have to weight your scuds, but a lot of times I'll fish these scuds in still waters, kind of sight fishing in the lake. So I like to have a fly that's got a little weight so it'll get down just a little bit quicker. So I'm going to take some 10,000 lead wire, and I'm going to start it back here just above the point on the barb. I'm going to make about 18 turns, and I'm going to break the ends off. And then I'm going to slide those together so you can see I moved that forward just a bit. So this back end is just about even with the point on the barb. I can see that far edge didn't break off cleanly, so I'm just going to smooth it down like so. Now, of course, you can vary the amount of lead that you put on there, but like I say, I like to have a little weight to them. This also helps to kind of build the underbody shape a bit. On a side note, that was 10,000 lead wire, and if you're really a professional, this is how you keep your lead wire stored. It's just in a big wad like that. You know, it's really easy to keep it all coiled up nice and neat on the spool like this, but I like to keep a big wad of it like this. Just handy, so I have something to untangle every now and again. It's much more sporting that way. So once you've got that wire all tangled up, I'm going to come in with some 8/0 uni in Olive Dun is the color, which is sort of a gray olive color. This is a really pretty color. It's a good match for a lot of different bugs. And I'm going to start this thread just about an eye length behind the hook eye. Now, this is a new spool of thread, and this thread's fairly round. So to start your thread off when you got a brand new spool, to flatten it, see how I can make one turn around and then sort of rock the thread back and forth, and you can see how that'll flatten it. Starting the thread with that flattened thread will make it a little easier to do the thread work that we've got to do here. So I'm going to start that thread and cut that tag, and you can see I'm holding the back end of the lead wraps forward here as I build a thread dam up onto them. And then I'm going to wrap all the way back, and I kind of just jump off the end, and I'll build a little thread dam back here. And you can see your thread will sort of want to split from the bare shank up onto the lead. But we're just going to kind of smooth that taper off a bit. And then I'll come forward and back again. Just smoothing that out as we go. Now when I get here, I like to reposition the hook a bit, so I'm going to tilt it just a bit with the hook eye down. That's going to expose the bend and make it a little easier to get my antenna in, the antennae in at the back of the fly. So what I've got here is a mallard flank feather that I've dyed kind of a gray olive color. It's a nice scud color. And I'm going to take a little clump of these fibers, and I've got, you know, a fairly good sized section of these. I'm going to pull them off. I don't really take a lot of pains to keep them even or nice and neat. The tips of these fibers are generally pretty wispy, and I do want them to kind of spread out and splay a bit. So I'll take that clump, and I'm going to tie that in at the bend with just a couple of turns. And again, I kind of want it splayed out like that, so you can see how I've kind of lifted that up. And it's, you know, 3/4 of a shank length long, maybe just a touch shorter. Then I'll wrap just onto the beginning of the lead there, and I'll trim those stubs out. So we've got a little spray for a tail there. Now I can reposition my hook, and I'm going to come in with just some 6/0 tippet material, or I'm sorry, 6X tippet material. I'm using just regular nylon here, and if you buy tippet from me, you should probably use fluorocarbon, you know, the most expensive stuff you can get, but in this case, this is just 6X mono. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to put my thread about in the center of the hook, and I'm going to lay this piece of mono across the top of the hook and catch it on the far side. And I'm going to draw it down to length. and I'm going to wrap back over it, keeping it along the far side of the hook, and I'll explain why that far side is important here when we get to that point. So I've got that butted right up to the base of the tail. I'll clip that in my material spring and then just bump my thread forward a bit. Now the shellback on my Scuds, there's a lot of stuff you can use. You can use pearl flashabou, you can use Scud back, you can use thin skin, lots of different materials that you can use. The material I started using years ago that I really like, and it's an old material. This stuff is called Swiss straw. It's synthetic raffia, and this is a nice material for Scud backs. You can see it comes sort of rolled up in a rope, but you can spread it out into a sheet. And what I want to do here is unroll that into a sheet like so, and you can see it's got some nice texture to it. What I want to do is I want to cut a piece that's a little wider than the gap of the hook, even on this wide gapped hook, because I'm going to allow some of the wrinkle in the material to form the creases in my shellback. So what I want to do is come in, get this here where you can see it, and I've just cut a notch in there. One of the coolest things about Swiss straw is it tears very easily lengthwise. So this way it tears very easily. This way it's super strong, very strong stuff. So I'm going to take that strip, and you can see sort of the finished width of that. It's just maybe half again, the hook gap. And I'm going to bump my thread to about the center of the hook and sort of pinch this down, and I want to catch it right on top of the hook. And you can see, I want to catch it on top of the hook and then pull it out, and then I'll tie it in again properly, about like that. And you can see that it'll sort of buckle around the hook. So I want to wrap back over it all the way back to the base of the tail. And I'll come forward again. You can see how that's a nice wide flat sheet there at the bend. Now there's a lot of dubbings that you can use for Scuds, and I used to custom mix a bunch of stuff when I was younger, but Wapsi has come out with a dub. This has been out for a long time now, but this is called Sow Scud dubbing, and it's antron, squirrel, rabbit, possum, I think, is in there. It's a mix of a bunch of different materials, and this particular color is called Smoky Olive. Makes a beautiful Scud. One of the downsides to this dubbing is those antron fibers are very long, so it tends to bind down. Because they're long fibers, it tends to bind down and twist down fairly tight. So what I'll do to it is I'll take the whole clump of dubbing and I'll cut it into 1/4 to 1/2 inch sections like so. So I've just cut that with my scissors. You can see where I've cut that clump in half. So now I've got a shorter staple length, and that'll control the length of the legs of on my Scud, so that I don't have legs that I've got to trim off after the fact. I want more randomness than clean cut legs after the fact. So now I'm going to take a little pinch of this dubbing, put a little dubbing wax on my fingers, and you can see there's most of the bulk that we need on this fly is already on the hook. I would say 90% of it. So this layer of dubbing is not to build up the body. It's merely to add the texture and color. So it's not going to take very much dubbing. I'm going to use my bare thread between the dubbing and the hook to work back to the bend. And put my first turn right at the bend, and then I'm going to work up toward the middle. And I want the middle of the hook to be the fattest part. So you can see I can kind of start to overlap a couple turns there. And I should run out just as I approach the hook eye, like so. So there's just a slight sort of football-shaped taper there. Now I'm going to take my Swiss straw up over the top, and as I do this, let me turn this. You can see it sort of wrinkles over the top of the fly. I don't want it to come all the way down and fold all the way down around the sides of the fly. I want it to stay wrinkled across the top. So I'm going to come up and over it and pinch it down behind the hook eye with a couple turns of thread. So you can see that's buckled across the top. You can see how wide that looks right now. Now this is the reason that I tied my ribbing, my mono, in on the far side of the hook. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the far side and then come up on this near side. Had I tied this wire or this mono in on my near side, it would lift this edge back here and form a wrinkle. That's sort of going the wrong direction. What I want to do is get it to come up and buckle this material, this Swiss straw, around the hook. So as I start to make these segments, I'm pulling down tight on this mono as I rib forward through the body. And you can see how that's forming a really nice little shellback over the top of the fly. When I get to the front, I'll tie that off with a couple of turns as well. Now I can come in and trim both the Swiss straw and the mono out. Just a few turns of thread to cover that, and then I'll whip finish. And I try to build the head into the shape of the rest of the fly. So you can see how that shellback is sort of folded down around the sides of the fly. Now to pick our legs out, you can come in with a dubbing brush or a bodkin and be the most patient person in the world and pick these out one strand at a time. Or what I like to use is a piece of Velcro. So this is the hook side of a strip of Velcro, and I've cut it so that it's about as wide as the gap, or wide as the shank of the hook in this case. And I'm going to take this and run it underneath the hook like I was polishing a shoe, and I kind of sweep down on both sides and brush those fibers down. I'll usually sweep them toward the bin, just cosmetically speaking, so that they look like they're going the right direction. Now ordinarily on the finished fly, I would not worry one bit about this extra long strand of dubbing, but since I've got it up on that big giant screen and I can see it, I just trim that down a little bit more to length. I've got another one here. Can't actually see those with my naked eye, but I can see them on the screen. We've also got a big guard hair right here that got cut up in that ribbing. And if you're super anal retentive like I am, you'll pull that out. And we can all feel much better about that. Add one little shot of head cement here, and we're going to have a finished scud. Now, obviously you can tie this in all sorts of different colors. Olive gray, tan, orange, pinks. Live scuds tend to be more earth tony colors, and dead scuds tend to be the oranges and pinks. But there is our little finished plain old scud. A few little tricks kind of to keep in mind on that one, but a fun fly to tie, easy to fill your box with, and at the right time of year these flies do work, particularly in the spring on tailwaters. Scuds are surprisingly prevalent in a lot of waters that I didn't think they would be, but there's always a few of them. Almost any tailwater's got a few scuds in it, and some have tons and tons of them. But that's a quick, simple scud pattern. Hope you like it. Twist a few up, put them in your box, and let me know what you think.